The business trip to Chicago was supposed to last 3 days, but when the client canceled the final meeting at the last minute, I found myself heading home a day early. Sitting on the flight back to San Francisco, watching the fluffy white clouds drift past the window, a strange sense of emptiness washed over me. I should have been happy to be going home early to my husband, but for some reason, all I felt was tired. I was tired of the endless business trips, tired of the lonely meals in unfamiliar hotels, and tired of the silence in the very house I had poured my heart and soul into creating. The sleek, modern home in Marin County was my first major project after graduating with my degree in architecture. I had drawn every line, chosen every tile, and fussed over every small corner with the dream of building a happy home. But I suppose a house, no matter how beautiful, can't become a home on its own. I had been married to Michael for 3 years. 3 years since I, a young architect with a promising career, had put my ambitions on hold to become the steadfast support system for him. Back then, Michael was nurturing a tech startup. He told me he needed my support, both emotionally and financially. Without a moment's hesitation, I used all of my savings. I even secretly sold a few pieces of vintage jewelry my mother had given me to help him secure his initial capital. I believed in our love, in his drive, and in his talent. I thought that as long as we were united, we could overcome any obstacle. Michael's company gradually found its footing, and he became busier and busier. Dinners together became rare, replaced by hurried phone calls, explanations of last-minute meetings, and client dinners he couldn't possibly miss. I told myself he was working hard for our future. I wandered alone in our spacious house, the loneliness gnawing at me day by day. About 6 months ago, Michael said he was too busy to take care of me. "What if we hire some help, honey?" he'd suggested. He mentioned a distant cousin from his side of the family, a young woman named Jessica from a small town in Ohio. He said she was sweet, honest, and from a struggling family. She had just finished high school and had to put off college to support her parents. Bringing her here would help us with the house, and it would be like we were doing a good deed. I agreed, thinking that having another person in the house might make it less lonely. The day Jessica arrived, my heart went out to her. She was thin and pale, dressed in simple, worn-out clothes. Standing amidst the luxury of our home, she seemed timid, keeping her eyes fixed on the floor. I treated her like a younger sister, buying her new clothes, teaching her how to use the modern appliances, and never letting her do any of the heavy lifting. I thought I was doing a good thing, taking a poor, deserving girl under my wing, never realizing I was welcoming a viper into my own home. The taxi stopped at the front gate, and I pulled my suitcase down the driveway. The house was still and silent under the late afternoon sun. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. Not a sound. That was strange. Jessica should have been home by now, preparing dinner. "Jessica?" I called out softly. "Are you here?" No answer. She probably went out to get groceries, I thought. I dragged my suitcase upstairs, planning to take a long, relaxing shower after the flight. But as I passed the master bedroom, I froze. My ears started to ring. From behind the slightly ajar wooden door, I could hear the sound of running water, the unmistakable spray of the shower. My heart began to pound erratically. The guest bathroom was downstairs, and Jessica's own private bathroom was at the end of the hall. Why? Why was there water running in our bedroom? A crazy, terrifying thought crept into my mind. I tried to push it away, telling myself the faucet was probably broken, that I had misheard. Trembling, I gently pushed the bedroom door open. The first thing that met my eyes wasn't my husband, but Jessica's simple work uniform tossed carelessly on the floor. Next to it was the bath towel I always used. And the sound of the shower was coming from the ensuite bathroom inside our bedroom. My chest felt like it was being squeezed in a vice. I couldn't breathe. I steadied myself against the wall, trying to stay upright. All sound around me seemed to vanish, leaving only the steady, relentless rush of water, a cruel soundtrack mocking my own foolishness. What had I done wrong? I had treated her so well. And Michael, where was he? Could he be in there with her? Pain, betrayal, and a humiliating rage churned into a tidal wave that threatened to drown me. I wanted to storm in, to scream, to drag them both out and demand an explanation, but no. A terrifying coldness took hold of me. I would not make a scene. I would not let them see me in this pathetic state. They wanted to stage a play behind my back? Then I would give them a bigger surprise. I silently, carefully, stepped out of the room, pulling the key ring from my purse. A soft click echoed in the hallway. The master bedroom door was now locked from the outside. I didn't stop there. I went downstairs, straight to the main circuit breaker for the entire house. My hand didn't tremble in the slightest as I threw the switch. Clack. The entire house plunged into darkness and absolute silence. The water in the bathroom upstairs stopped. I stood there in the dark, my back pressed against the cold wall, my heart hammering against my ribs. I waited. 1 minute, 5 minutes, then 10 minutes passed in eerie silence. And then, exactly 15 minutes later, a terrified, panicked scream tore through the house from upstairs. But it wasn't Jessica's voice. It was the desperate cry of Michael. My husband. The story was only just beginning. Michael's scream echoed from the second floor, shattering the deadly silence. It wasn't the shout of a grown man, but the panicked cry of a cornered animal. I remained motionless, my back against the wall, my heart pounding, but my mind was strangely clear. I had no intention of going up. I wanted them to taste the feeling of being trapped in darkness, in the fear and guilt of their own making. A few seconds later, I heard frantic pounding on the bedroom door. "Help! Is anyone out there? Open the door!" Michael's voice was frantic, laced with panic. It was accompanied by Jessica's muffled sobs. "Michael, I'm so scared. It's so dark. What do we do?" Their performance was flawless. Even in a moment of crisis, they played their roles as concerned cousins perfectly. A cold smile touched my lips. I walked slowly back to the breaker box and calmly flipped the switch. Clack. The crystal chandelier in the living room burst to life, restoring the house's fake, opulent glow. I didn't rush upstairs. Instead, I went to the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water. I needed to stay calm. I knew the real drama was just about to begin. I heard the sound of the lock turning, then the bedroom door flew open. Michael burst out, his face pale and drenched in sweat. He was breathing heavily and stared at me standing at the foot of the stairs with an expression of pure disbelief. "Olivia, what are you doing home?" he stammered. Following him was Jessica. She was hastily wrapped in a bath towel, her long hair sopping wet, dripping onto the floor. When she saw me, her eyes widened, her face draining of all color. She quickly hid behind Michael, trembling like a frightened animal. She looked so pitiful, so pathetic. If only I hadn't seen her clothes discarded on my bedroom floor. "My flight was canceled. I just got in," I replied, my voice chillingly calm. "But it seems I've come back at a bad time. What were you and your cousin doing in my bedroom that caused you to scream like that?" My question was a knife, striking them both where it hurt. Michael fumbled, looking from Jessica to me, trying to fabricate an explanation. It's nothing, honey." "Jessica..." She felt dizzy and fainted in the bathroom. I heard a thud and ran in to check on her. But then the bathroom door got stuck and the power went out. "We just panicked, that's all." He rambled on, unable to look me in the eye. The story was laughably clumsy. Fainting in a steamy shower, a jammed door, and a power outage all at the same time? Did he think I was a 3-year-old? I stared into his averted eyes. Dizzy? Then why isn't she wearing any clothes? Why is she wrapped in my towel? And why was she in our master bathroom and not her own? The sharpness in my voice left Michael speechless. He stammered, unable to answer. From behind him, Jessica began to cry. "Olivia, I'm so sorry. It was my fault," she sobbed, her shoulders shaking. I saw that your bathroom was so big and beautiful. I just wanted to see it. I got dizzy while I was showering. I really did. Michael was just trying to help me. Please don't misunderstand." Her acting skills were far superior to Michael's. She tried to shift all the blame onto herself, painting herself as a naive country girl whose curiosity led to a terrible mistake. She wanted me to believe my husband was just a good-hearted cousin, a hero saving his damsel in distress. I watched them silently perform their duet. Tears welled in my eyes, but I swallowed them back down. I couldn't cry. I couldn't be weak now. Crying would only give them satisfaction, only make me look like a jealous, irrational wife in Michael's eyes. "Is that so?" I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Well, you two gave me quite a scare. If she's feeling faint, we should get her to the hospital. Let me call 911. I pulled out my phone and pretended to dial. No, please don't." Jessica quickly waved her hands. I'm feeling much better now. I just need to rest. There's no need to bother a doctor." I looked at her, then at Michael, who was visibly sighing in relief. "If you're okay, then fine. But you should go get dressed. Walking around wrapped in a towel like this, anyone would think this house has no standards." My words were soft but carried the weight of a slap across both their faces. Jessica's face flushed red. She mumbled an apology and scurried back to her room. Now it was just me and Michael, facing each other in the suffocating silence. He stepped closer, trying to take my hand. "Olivia, don't be angry. I know you're upset. It's my fault for not teaching her better. Please don't overthink it." He was still trying to play the loving husband, the responsible older cousin. But when his hand touched mine, all I felt was disgust. I gently pulled my hand away. "I'm not angry. I'm just tired from the flight. You should get some rest too. You have work tomorrow." With that, I turned and pulled my suitcase toward the guest room at the end of the hall. I couldn't share a bed with that man for another night. That room, that bed, everything had been tainted by his lies and betrayal. "Olivia, what are you doing?" Michael called after me, a hint of panic in his voice. "Our room is this way." "I want to sleep alone tonight," I said without turning back. "Our bedroom isn't just ours anymore." The guest room door clicked shut, leaving Michael alone with his confusion and guilt. I walked into the unfamiliar room, locked the door, and sank to the floor. Only then did I allow myself to cry. Hot, bitter tears streamed down my face. This betrayal was more painful than 1,000 knives. But in the darkness of my despair, I knew that the weak, trusting Olivia was gone. When the sun rose tomorrow, a different person would rise with it. A person who would make the ones who hurt her pay a very, very dear price. Was this the first time they had deceived me? Or was there a larger conspiracy hidden behind their clumsy act that I had yet to uncover? I couldn't sleep a wink that night. I sat curled up on the cold bed in the guest room, my mind racing with 1,000 questions. I could hear Michael's steady snores from the master bedroom, a familiar sound that now seemed alien and repulsive. I tried to tell myself I was being paranoid, that it was all just a stupid misunderstanding like they claimed. But my rational mind told me that misunderstandings don't happen in someone else's bedroom, completely naked. The ugly truth was a weight on my chest, making it hard to breathe. I started to replay memories, connecting dots I had previously ignored. I remembered about 3 months ago, on a weekend night, Michael said he had to meet an important client at a rooftop bar. He was dressed to the nines, even wearing the expensive cologne I had just bought him. I'd offered to go with him, but he brushed it off, saying it was business and no place for wives. He came home close to midnight, reeking of alcohol and a cloyingly sweet woman's perfume. When I questioned him, he got irritated, claiming it was the client's secretary's perfume and I should stop being so jealous. I believed him then. I let it go. Then I remembered something else, the vintage pearl necklace my mother had given me for my birthday. It was priceless, not just for its monetary value, but because it had belonged to my grandmother. I cherished it, only wearing it on special occasions. But about 2 months ago, it vanished. I turned the house upside down looking for it, but it was gone. When I asked Michael and Jessica, they both said they hadn't seen it. Michael even comforted me, saying I probably lost it somewhere, and promised to buy me a new, prettier one. Jessica acted even more concerned than I was, helping me search everywhere with a guilty look on her face. I had been touched by their concern, but now, a terrible suspicion crept into my mind. Could they have taken it? I trembled as I recalled that around the same time the necklace disappeared, I saw Jessica wearing a new pair of delicate white gold earrings. When I asked about them, she just shyly said she had saved up her salary to treat herself. Her salary was only about $2,500 a month. How could she afford earrings that must have cost at least a few $1,000s? The more I thought, the more tangled my thoughts became. The disparate pieces were slowly starting to form a picture I didn't want to see. And then there was the money. Michael constantly told me the company was going through a rough patch and we needed to tighten our belts. He would frequently suggest I withdraw money from my savings to invest in short-term projects he claimed were sure things. With absolute trust in my husband, I had transferred significant sums to him without a second thought. He'd always said it was business, and I didn't need to worry my pretty little head about it. Thinking back, I had never seen a single contract or document related to those projects. It was all just his word. I had been so blind, so naive. I had handed him everything, my money, my career, my love, only to receive this cruel reality in return. I had made myself a fool, a walking ATM in a drama directed by my own husband and his innocent cousin. The pain morphed into a cold, hard rage. I couldn't just sit here and guess anymore. I needed proof. Incontrovertible proof to expose their true faces. But how? Confront them directly? They would surely deny everything, maybe even turn the tables and blame me. I needed to act silently, smartly. Suddenly, an idea sparked in my mind. Cameras. I would install hidden cameras in my own house. I would turn the home I had so lovingly built into a stage, where their every deceitful word and action would be recorded in crystal clear detail. I would become the silent audience to their play, waiting for the day the final curtain fell. The decision made, I felt a strange sense of resolve. I was no longer the weak Olivia of yesterday. I would become the director, the one holding the script, and I would write a fitting end for these terrible actors. I opened my laptop and started searching for the most sophisticated spy cameras online. I researched how to install them, how to connect them to my phone. I studied with the same intensity I would for a major architectural project. The sun began to peek through the window, heralding a new day. For me, it wasn't just a new day, it was the beginning of a war to reclaim my dignity and everything that belonged to me. I told myself I had to be careful, not to leave any trace. I needed the perfect excuse to be home alone to execute my plan. Would they sense the change in me and become suspicious? And would my plan go as smoothly as I hoped? To install a camera system without Michael and Jessica noticing, I needed a perfect window of opportunity, at least half a day alone in the house. I couldn't be rash. Any suspicion could ruin the entire plan. I spent the next morning brainstorming, and finally, the perfect excuse came to me. I called my mother in Boston. "Mom, your daughter is about to drown in a sea of blueprints. I need a lifesaver," I said in a playful, whining tone I hadn't used in years. My mother laughed on the other end. "All right, what is it this time? What mess have you gotten yourself into that you need your old mother to clean up?" I launched into my fabricated story. I have an urgent design project for a huge client. They need the initial sketches by this afternoon, but my boss is making me go to a meeting all the way out in Sacramento. "I can't be in two places at once, Mom. Could you pretend to be my assistant and go to the meeting for me? All you have to do is show up, take notes, and tell me what happened." My mother, a sharp woman who had navigated the business world for years, immediately sensed something was wrong. "Olivia, what's going on? You've never asked me for help with work before. Is it that husband of yours? Did he do something to you?" I knew I couldn't hide it from her for long. I sighed, my voice dropping. "Mom, there are some things I have to handle myself. I can't explain everything right now. I just need your help this one time. I need you to keep Michael and Jessica out of the house for at least 5 hours." There was a pause on the line, then my mother's voice came back, firm and decisive. "All right, do what you have to do. I'll help. Tell me the plan." Here was my plan. My mother would call Michael and tell him she was flying in for a surprise visit and had a valuable gift for us. She would invite Michael and Jessica because he would never leave her alone with me to a fancy restaurant a good distance from the house. My mother would do her best to drag out the meal and conversation for as long as possible. To be extra sure, I asked her to accidentally drop her expensive designer handbag into the restaurant's ornamental pond after the meal, creating a diversion to buy even more time. Everything went according to plan. My mother called Michael, and when he heard his mother-in-law was flying in with a gift, he was overjoyed and agreed immediately. He even told Jessica to dress nicely to make a good impression. Seeing their excited faces as they left the house, I could only scoff. They were walking happily into a trap, completely unaware. The moment their car was out of sight, I sprang into action. I had ordered a set of micro cameras online the night before with rush delivery. The package arrived within 15 minutes. I now held 4 cameras, each as small as a button, battery-powered and connected to my phone via Wi-Fi. I had already mapped out the locations. The first I hid in a potted plant in the corner of the living room, giving it a clear view of the main living space where they often watched TV and talked. The second, I cleverly attached to the back of the wall clock in Michael's home office, the place he often took private calls. The third, and most important, went into our master bedroom. I tucked it inside the base of the bedside lamp, a position that could capture both audio and video with perfect clarity. The final camera went in the hallway, just above Jessica's bedroom door. I wanted to know what she did, where she went, and who she met when I wasn't home. The installation went smoothly. As an architect, finding blind spots and discrete locations was my specialty. I carefully connected all the cameras to the app on my phone, checking the angles and image quality one last time. Everything was perfect. I had turned my home into a surveillance fortress, a stage where I was the only audience member. I finished everything in just under 3 hours, with plenty of time to spare before they returned. I calmly made myself a cup of tea, sat down on the sofa, and opened the camera app. I felt like a director checking the stage before the show began. The picture was sharp from every angle. I could even hear the ticking of the clock, the faint sound of the wind whispering through the window. Suddenly, my phone buzzed. A text from my mom. "Fish has taken the bait. Currently staging the rescue the handbag scene. Prepare yourself." I smiled and texted back, "Thanks, Mom. Give it an Oscar-worthy performance." About 2 hours later, Michael and Jessica returned, both looking rather annoyed. It seemed my mother's performance had cost them a significant amount of time and effort. "I don't know what's wrong with your mother," Michael grumbled, loosening his tie. "She just had to drop her bag in the pond. I had to get the restaurant staff to fish it out. Wasted the whole afternoon." Jessica was silent, but her face was a mask of disappointment. Clearly, her debut in front of the matriarch hadn't gone as she'd hoped. I just smiled and played the part of the dutiful wife. "Oh, honey, I'm sure it was an accident. Is Mom okay?" They had no idea that from this moment on, their every move, their every word, was under my control. I sat with them through dinner, listening to them complain about their tiring day, my heart strangely calm. I was waiting, patiently waiting. I knew the truth would soon be exposed, their play would soon end, and I would be the one to bring the curtain down. It only took a few hours after activating the cameras for me to get my first pieces of evidence. That night, after I had gone to the guest room to sleep, Michael and Jessica, thinking I was sound asleep, began to show their true colors. That night, I lay on the bed in the guest room, feigning a deep sleep, but every one of my senses was on high alert. My phone, screened down on the pillow beside me, was silently streaming live footage from every corner of the house. Around 11 o'clock, certain that I was asleep, Michael tiptoed out of the master bedroom. He didn't go downstairs for a drink of water. He went straight to Jessica's door and knocked twice, softly. The door opened a crack, and Michael slipped inside. My heart stopped. So, they weren't just sneaking around when I was away, they were bold enough to do it right under my nose while I was in the very same house. I quickly switched the monitoring app to the camera in the hallway, the one I had placed directly above Jessica's door. The door wasn't fully closed. A small gap remained. While I couldn't see inside clearly, I could hear fragments of their conversation. Jessica's voice was whiny and resentful. "Why did you let me get humiliated like that today? Your mother-in-law is a real piece of work, deliberately making things difficult for me." "Come on, babe, don't be mad." Michael's voice was placating. "My mother-in-law has always been like that. She was just testing you a little. Besides, she doesn't know about us. Just be patient. Once I get everything, I'll give you a proper title." Get everything. A proper title. Michael's words were like hammer blows to my head. So this wasn't just a sordid affair. This was a calculated conspiracy. He didn't just want to satisfy his lust. He wanted to take everything that belonged to me. "You promise?" Jessica's voice was still doubtful. Of course. Who else would I care for? My wife is nothing more than a walking ATM. She's so stupid. She believes every word I say. Just a little longer. Once I convince her to sign the transfer deeds for the land and the shares in that joke of a company she's invested in, everything will be ours. He spoke about me, the wife who had sacrificed everything for him, with a contempt and cruelty that was unbelievable. I bit my lip so hard I tasted blood, trying to stifle a sob. My self-respect, my love, he had trampled on it all without a second thought. Their conversation continued. "But I'm scared," Jessica said, her voice laced with worry. "She's been acting strange lately, so cold and distant. I'm afraid she's figured something out." "You worry too much," Michael reassured her. "What could she possibly know? She's never suspected me before. It's probably just work stress. And even if she did know, what could she do? She has no family here, no support system. If she leaves me, who does she have? She has to cling to me like a leech." The arrogance and smugness in his voice made me sick. He was right. I had isolated myself, cutting ties with my family to follow him. And now he was using that as a weapon to control and belittle me. "All right, don't overthink it. Get some sleep. You have to keep playing the part of the sweet, innocent cousin tomorrow," Michael said. I heard the sound of a kiss being blown. Then he crept out of her room, looked both ways, and slipped back into the master bedroom. I lay motionless on the bed, silent tears soaking my pillow. That short conversation had laid everything bare. A meticulously planned conspiracy, a systematic deception, a betrayal that was not just emotional but also financial. I hadn't just lost a husband. I was on the verge of losing everything I had worked so hard to build. The overwhelming pain slowly hardened into a cold fury. I would not let them succeed. I had the evidence in my hand. This video was my sharpest weapon. But I couldn't face a cunning man like Michael and his mother, who I was now certain was the puppet master, alone. I needed an ally, someone smart, experienced, and powerful enough to help me devise a perfect counterattack. A name flashed in my mind: David, my former boss at the architecture firm. He was a successful businessman, intelligent, composed, and had always treated me with kindness. He had expressed his regret many times when I decided to quit my job. He'd said my talent shouldn't be buried in a kitchen. Once, at a company party, after a few drinks, he had looked at me and said, "Olivia, if you ever run into any trouble, don't hesitate to call me. I'll always be there to help." I had thought it was just polite conversation at the time, but now, in this desperate situation, it was the only lifeline I could grasp. With trembling hands, I opened my contacts and found David's number, which I had saved long ago but never once called. I took a deep breath and pressed the call button. After a few rings, a familiar, warm, deep voice answered. "Hello, David speaking." David? It's Olivia." My voice trembled, catching in my throat. There was a second of silence on the other end, then his voice became surprised and concerned. "Olivia? Is that really you? Is something wrong? You don't sound like yourself." Hearing the genuine concern in his voice, the wall of strength I had tried so hard to build suddenly crumbled. I broke down, sobbing uncontrollably, unable to speak a single word. "Olivia, calm down. Where are you? Tell me where you are. I'm coming right now." I didn't know if calling David was the right decision, but at that moment, I had no one else to trust. Would he really help me? And if he did, what could we possibly do against a conspiracy that had been so perfectly woven? Not even 30 minutes later, a sleek black Mercedes pulled up quietly in front of my house. David stepped out, looking as poised and elegant as ever, but his face was etched with concern. I had asked him to meet me at a 24-hour diner nearby. I couldn't risk him coming to the house. I had only left a short note for Michael, saying I had to step out for an emergency. When David saw me huddled in a corner booth, my eyes puffy and my face a mess, he couldn't hide his dismay. He slid into the seat opposite me and, without asking, ordered me a hot ginger tea. "What happened, Olivia? Tell me everything," he said, his voice low and reassuring. Looking into his sincere eyes, I hesitated no longer. I mustered all my courage and told him the entire story. I told him about my 3 years of marriage, my sacrifices, Michael's transformation. I told him about the horrifying night of my return, the clumsy act put on by my husband and the housekeeper. And finally, I showed him the video from the hidden camera, the video that exposed the entire plot by Michael and his mother to seize my assets. David watched the video, his expression growing colder and harder with every second. He didn't say a word, just watched it again silently. His silence made me anxious. "So, what do you think?" I asked, my voice trembling. David put the phone down on the table and looked directly at me. His eyes no longer held pity, but the sharp, decisive focus of a man in a boardroom. "Olivia, you have been far too lenient with them," he said, his tone firm. "This is no longer a simple case of infidelity. This is organized fraud. Their target isn't just your money, it's your entire estate and your future." His words were a hammer, confirming my deepest fears. "So, what should I do?" I asked, feeling helpless. "Should I go to the police?" David shook his head. "Not yet. This video is crucial evidence, but it was obtained illegally. If we present it in court, they could countersue you for invasion of privacy. We need a different plan. A more systematic approach that will make them walk right into our trap, forcing them to confess to crimes backed by undeniable proof." He began to analyze the situation. "Your husband, Michael first, had my people do a preliminary check on his company. It's basically a shell corporation with no significant business activity. All of its revenue comes from the projects you've been funding. In other words, he's been using your money to support himself and his entire family." I was stunned. The startup I had been so proud to support was nothing but a sham. "And what about their plan to take the house and my shares?" I asked. "This house is in your name. You hold the deed. The company shares they mentioned are actually from your family's company. Your father transferred a small portion to you after you graduated as a wedding gift. They think it's your personal asset and want to get their hands on it," David explained. "They are greedy, but they are also foolish. They don't realize that transferring those assets requires your signature and a complex legal process. A contract signed when you're not in your right mind would be worthless." Listening to his analysis, I started to calm down. At least my most significant assets were still safe. "So, what's our plan?" I asked, my voice steadier now. David smiled, a confident glint in his eye. "We'll use their own strategy against them. They want to set a trap for you? We'll set a bigger one for them. For now, you go back and act as if nothing has happened. Pretend to believe their story about Jessica fainting. Act like a heartbroken wife who's a little suspicious but, because she loves her husband so much, is willing to forgive. You have to lower their guard, make them believe you're still completely under their control." "And then what?" David paused, his eyes flashing. "Then, we will give them an opportunity to execute their plan, an opportunity they can't possibly refuse. And this time, we will be the ones setting the net, and they will be the fish that swim right into it." He started outlining the first steps. He told me to buy a miniature audio recorder to carry with me at all times. He said I should start paying close attention to any documents Michael brought home. He also said he would have his own people discreetly monitor Michael and Jessica's every move. Our conversation lasted until dawn. When I returned home, the fear and confusion had been replaced by a fierce determination and an unwavering belief. I was no longer alone in this fight. I had an ally, a man who was not only intelligent and capable, but who genuinely cared about protecting me. As I walked into the house, I saw Michael slumped on the sofa, looking as though he had been up all night waiting for me. He jumped up the moment he saw me, his face a mask of worry. "Olivia, where have you been all night? I was so worried about you." He was back to playing the part of the model husband. I looked at him, feeling nothing but contempt, but I remembered David's advice. I had to act. I had to play my part perfectly. I walked over and buried my face in his shoulder, pretending to sob. "I'm sorry. I was just overthinking things and needed a walk. I'm scared, Michael. I'm scared of losing you." Michael was momentarily stunned by my action. Then he let out a sigh of relief and wrapped his arms around me. "You silly girl, I'm right here. Nothing happened. Don't let your imagination run wild, okay?" He had no idea that my embrace no longer held the warmth of love, but the cold chill of a revenge plot just beginning to unfold. My performance seemed to have worked, but how long could I keep up this charade? And what exactly was the trap David mentioned, the one that Michael and his mother would walk into without a shred of suspicion? In the days that followed, I began living a double life. In front of Michael and Jessica, I was Olivia, the wife who, though slightly jealous, was so in love that she was quick to forgive. I continued to take care of Michael, to treat Jessica with kindness, but in every gesture, I deliberately revealed a lingering sadness, a quiet unease. I wanted him to think that while I had moved on, the incident had left a crack in my heart. As predicted, Michael, burdened by his guilty conscience, tried even harder to be attentive and loving to compensate. He bought me flowers and gifts. He even started cooking my favorite meals, things he hadn't done in years. Jessica also played her part perfectly. She acted deeply remorseful, doing her chores quietly and avoiding my gaze. Whenever I spoke to her, she would look down and mumble apologies. They thought I had completely bought their act, that I was just being moody and needed to be coaxed back into good spirits. Meanwhile, the other half of my life unfolded in secret. I always carried the mini recorder David gave me. Every conversation in the house, from Michael's sickeningly sweet words to idle chatter, was recorded. I also paid closer attention to the documents Michael brought home. Thinking I was a wife uninterested in business, he often left company papers on his desk unguarded. I secretly photographed everything, from shady investment contracts to financial reports with clumsily forged numbers. I sent all of this evidence to David. With his expertise, he quickly analyzed the documents and identified the fatal flaws in Michael's business operations. His company was an empty shell, drowning in debt, surviving only on my investments. About 2 weeks later, when I felt they had completely let their guard down, I decided it was time to cast the bait. That evening at dinner, I deliberately acted tired and listless. I pushed my food around my plate before putting my fork down. "What's wrong, honey? You haven't seemed yourself lately," Michael asked with concern. I sighed, staring into the distance. "I don't know. Maybe I just feel suffocated being at home all the time. I miss working. I miss the days when I was free." I glanced at Michael and saw a thoughtful expression on his face. I knew I had struck a nerve. His plan was to take my assets, and to do that, he needed me to be happy and trusting. A sad, disillusioned wife would be much harder to convince to sign any papers. "Well," Michael began, What if we took a trip? Just the two of us. It's been a long time since we had any private time together. We could go somewhere quiet. No work. No one to bother us." My heart skipped a beat. The fish had taken the bait. This was the rekindle, the romance trap David had predicted. "A trip?" I feigned surprise, then hesitation. "But what about your company? And I wouldn't feel right leaving Jessica here all alone." "I can handle the company," Michael waved his hand dismissively, "and we can send Jessica home for a few days. She hasn't seen her family in a while anyway. See? I've thought of everything. You just have to say yes." He looked at me with expectant eyes. I lowered my head, pretending to think for a moment, then looked up with a weak smile. "All right. I guess I could use a change of scenery." Michael was ecstatic. He immediately pulled out his phone and started looking up destinations. "Where do you want to go? Beach or mountains? I saw this new resort up in Lake Tahoe. It looks beautiful and secluded. How about we go there?" He showed me pictures of an isolated resort deep in a pine forest. It looked romantic, but also eerily remote. I knew this was the place he had pre-selected for his scheme. A remote location with few people around was perfect for his sinister plans. I nodded in agreement. "It's beautiful. I'd love that." I immediately took a screenshot of the resort's name and sent it to David. He replied instantly. "Okay, I know the place. Leave the rest to me." That night, Michael excitedly planned our trip. He booked flights, a private villa, and even created a detailed itinerary. He said this would be our second honeymoon, a trip to heal all wounds. He had no idea it would be a fateful journey, one where the roles would be reversed. I would no longer be the victim. I would be the hunter. And he, the self-proclaimed genius, would be the prey walking straight into the snare. The stage was set, the location chosen. Everything was unfolding perfectly according to our script, but I couldn't help but feel a knot of anxiety in my stomach. When faced with the real situation, would I be calm and brave enough to play my part? And what exactly was David's plan? In the days leading up to the trip, Michael was the perfect husband. He packed my bags, bought me new dresses, and constantly whispered sweet nothings in my ear. He was so convincing that if I didn't already know his plan, I might have actually believed he was remorseful and wanted to make things right. I played along perfectly, acting happy and excited, occasionally leaning on his shoulder and thanking him. Our house suddenly felt warm and happy again, just like when we were first married. As arranged by Michael, Jessica asked for time off to visit her family. She played the part of the considerate cousin who didn't want to intrude on her relative's second honeymoon. Before leaving, she came to me with teary eyes and apologized one more time. I just smiled, patted her on the shoulder, and said I had forgotten all about it. Deep down, the hypocrisy of it all made me sick. On the day of our departure, while we were at the airport, I received a text from David. "Everything is ready. The actors are in position. Stay calm and follow the plan." I took a deep breath, feeling a little more confident. The flight landed in Reno, and we took a private car from the resort up to Lake Tahoe. The crisp, cool mountain air was a welcome change. The resort was exactly as advertised, isolated on a hillside, surrounded by a vast pine forest. The setting was beautiful and romantic, but its seclusion also created a sense of unease. Our villa was in a private corner of the property, complete with its own pool and a large garden patio. "What do you think?" "I picked the best for you," Michael whispered, hugging me from behind. I smiled and turned to give him a light kiss on the cheek. "Thank you, honey. I love it." The first afternoon was peaceful. We took a walk through the pine forest and took some pictures. Michael was the perfect gentleman, but I noticed him sneakily texting someone and a look of calculated anticipation in his eyes. Dinner was served on our private patio under the stars, with the gentle sound of the wind in the pines. Michael opened a bottle of expensive red wine. He poured me a full glass. "A toast," he said, raising his glass, "to our new beginning." I looked at the shimmering red liquid, my heart steady. I knew this was the moment he had been waiting for. There was definitely something in that wine. I smiled and raised my glass. "To a new beginning." I clinked my glass against his, then brought it to my lips and took the smallest sip, just enough to wet my lips. "Delicious," I complimented, then set the glass down. I refused to drink any more, claiming I wasn't used to strong wine. Michael looked slightly disappointed but didn't push it. He started telling cheerful stories, trying to create a romantic atmosphere. That's when I started my act. I clutched my stomach, my face contorting in pain. "Oh, my stomach hurts so much," I moaned, my voice weak. "Olivia, what's wrong?" Michael jumped up, rushing to my side. "I don't know. It's a sharp, cramping pain," I gasped, slumping over the table as if I couldn't bear it. "Oh, God, was it the food? Did you eat something bad?" Michael was in a panic, his face turning pale. His plan was to drug me, not to poison me. This sudden turn of events was completely outside his calculations. "I can't breathe. Call for help," I managed to say before collapsing to the ground, curling up in a ball. My performance had reached its climax. Michael was completely convinced I had severe food poisoning. In a total panic, he fumbled for his phone and stammered into it, calling the resort's front desk. "Emergency! My wife, I think she has food poisoning. Get an ambulance to Villa 12, now!" While Michael was frantically on the phone, I peeked through my barely open eyelids. From the shadows of the garden, I saw several figures moving. David's people. Our play was running perfectly. Within 10 minutes, an ambulance, siren wailing, screeched to a halt in front of the villa. 2 paramedics, arranged by David, rushed in and placed me on a stretcher. Michael ran alongside, his face white, endlessly asking, "Is my wife okay? Is her life in danger? It looks serious. We need to get her to the hospital immediately." "Sir, please come with us," one of the paramedics said with professional gravity. The ambulance sped off into the night, leaving the romantic resort and the half-eaten candlelit dinner behind. Michael sat beside me, clutching my hand, his face a mask of worry. But I knew that behind that worry was a furious disappointment. His perfect plan had been ruined by a sudden stomachache. He had no idea that the stomachache itself was part of a much more perfect plan, one that was leading him into a trap with no escape. When we arrived at the hospital, would my act be exposed? And what had David arranged next to corner Michael completely? The ambulance took a winding route through the dark, quiet roads around Lake Tahoe before pulling up to the back entrance of a large private hospital. This was the hospital David had arranged everything with beforehand. The hospital director was a close friend of his. Everything was prepared to make my performance as convincing as possible. I was wheeled directly into the emergency room. Michael was stopped outside, pacing anxiously in the hallway. Through a crack in the door, I could see him constantly on his phone, likely reporting the situation to his mother. A short while later, an older doctor, the hospital director himself, walked out of the ER, his face grave. "Who is the family of patient Olivia?" "That's me! I'm her husband!" Michael rushed over. "Doctor, how is my wife? Is she going to be okay?" The doctor shook his head with a heavy sigh. "Her condition is quite serious. We suspect acute poisoning from a powerful toxin. It's lucky she was brought in so quickly. We've pumped her stomach and started her on IV fluids, but she'll need to be monitored for at least a few days. Her condition is still unstable. It's too early to say anything for sure." Hearing the doctor's words, Michael's face grew even paler. "Pea poisoning? How is that possible? We both had the same dinner." "I'm fine, but she—" he stammered, trying to distance himself from any involvement. The doctor gave him a scrutinizing look. "We will have to report this to the police for a full investigation. Food poisoning at a 5-star resort is a very serious matter. As the person who shared the meal with her, you will likely be called in for questioning." The word police hit Michael like a thunderbolt. He flinched, taking a step back. His plan had been to drug me quietly, not to orchestrate a loud poisoning case involving law enforcement. My act had pushed him into a corner. He couldn't admit to putting something in my drink, but he also couldn't explain why I was the only one who got sick. "For now, please wait out here. We will let you know when the patient is awake," the doctor said before turning back into the ER. Michael collapsed onto a waiting room chair, running his hands through his hair, looking utterly lost and confused. Not only had his plan to steal my assets failed, but he was now at risk of being embroiled in a criminal investigation. Lying in my hospital bed, I watched his every reaction through a micro camera David had cleverly attached to the doctor's lapel. I knew, from this moment on, Michael was completely trapped. He was in an unfamiliar place, without his mother to scheme with no one to rely on. He was utterly alone and terrified. Michael didn't sleep at all that night. He just sat slumped in the hallway, occasionally getting up to pace, muttering to himself. The next morning, I was moved to a private room, one David had arranged to be as comfortable as possible. Michael was allowed to visit for a short time. He walked in and saw me lying on the bed, hooked up to IV drips, my face pale and sickly thanks to some clever makeup. He seemed to feel a flicker of remorse. "Olivia, how are you feeling?" he asked, his voice hoarse. I opened my eyes and looked at him weakly. "I'm okay, don't worry." "I'm so sorry," he said suddenly. "This is all my fault. If I hadn't pushed you to go on this trip, if I hadn't picked that god-forsaken resort, this wouldn't have happened." He was back to playing the part of the guilt-ridden husband. But this time, his apology felt a little more genuine. Perhaps facing the possibility of losing me had awakened a sliver of humanity in him, or perhaps he was just terrified for himself. I said nothing, just shook my head wearily and closed my eyes. I wanted him to believe I was still too weak to talk much. Michael sat by my side for a while before a nurse asked him to leave. Our next step was to let Michael stew in his fear and guilt for a few days. David had people pose as police officers, calling Michael periodically to summon him for questioning, asking him over and over about the dinner, about our relationship, about his company's finances. Each call sent Michael into a deeper panic. He started to believe he was genuinely the prime suspect in a criminal case. After 3 days of this mental torture, Michael was on the verge of a breakdown. He could no longer maintain his calm facade. He started calling his mother, crying and telling her everything. And of course, every one of those calls was being monitored by us. "Mom, what do I do? The police keep calling me. They think I poisoned Olivia." "Mom, you have to help me." His voice on the phone was desperate. On the other end, his mother, Sarah, was just as panicked. "Oh my God, how did it come to this? Did you do something stupid, son?" "No, I was only going to give her a little sleeping pill, that's all. I never thought she'd have such a bad reaction." The confession. He had finally said it himself. That audio recording was the final, irrefutable piece of evidence. David and I listened to the recording. A triumphant smile exchanged between us. The final net had been cast, and the biggest fish had swum right into it. We had everything we needed. It was time to end this play and begin the real judgment. With his confession in hand, what kind of sentence would Michael and his mother face, and what would I choose in the end? Forgiveness, or letting the law decide their fate? After obtaining the recording of Michael's confession, David and I knew the time was ripe. There was no need to continue the charade. The next morning, I made a miraculous recovery. The doctor announced I was out of danger and could be discharged in a few days. For Michael, this news was not a relief, but the beginning of a new nightmare. He knew that once I was fully recovered, I wouldn't let the matter drop so easily. He came to visit me, his face a mixture of relief and fear. He tried to be attentive, caring for my every need, peeling apples, spoon-feeding me porridge, telling jokes. He hoped this belated tenderness might soften me, might make me forget the poisoning. He was wrong. I accepted his care with cold indifference. I spoke little, offering only nods or shakes of my head. My silence made him increasingly anxious. On the day I was discharged, David came to pick me up. He arrived in his capacity as my former boss and old friend, there to support an employee. Seeing David, Michael was visibly stunned and displeased. The presence of a successful, sophisticated man at my side seemed to awaken his deep-seated insecurity and jealousy. "Thank you for everything these past few days," I said to Michael, my tone formal. "David is here to take care of me now. You should go home and rest." My words were a clear, unspoken declaration of the distance between us. Michael was speechless, forced to watch sullenly as I left the hospital with David. We didn't go back to the resort. David had booked a suite for me at a different hotel. Sitting in the luxurious room, looking out the window, I felt a strange sense of peace. The play was over, and I had won. "So, what's your next move?" David asked once he was sure we were alone. "With that recording, we can take him to court immediately. Attempted assault, he could face 2 to 5 years in prison." I thought about it silently. Sending Michael to prison? Was that what I really wanted? I hated him, yes, but the thought of him wasting his youth behind bars gave me a pang of unease. Besides, a lawsuit would be messy and public, affecting the reputation of both my family and myself. I didn't want to cause my parents any more worry. I don't want to press charges," I said. "I just want a divorce. I want to take back what's mine, and I want him and his mother to learn a lesson so they never bother me again." David nodded, as if he had expected my answer. "I understand. In that case, we'll use the recording as our trump card. We'll force them to accept all of our terms, quietly." That evening, I sent Michael a text message. "Tomorrow night, 8 p.m., at Café Lux. Come alone. And tell your mother not to try anything, or a certain recording of your conversation will be sent directly to the police." The message was short but heavy with threat. I knew Michael had no other choice. The next day, I arrived at the cafe with David. He sat at a discreet table, posing as a regular customer. Michael arrived on time, looking gaunt and exhausted. He sat down opposite me, unable to meet my eyes. "What do you want?" he asked, his voice raspy. I didn't say much. I simply placed my phone on the table and pressed play. The panicked voices of him and his mother filled the quiet space of the cafe. "Only going to give her a little sleeping pill." Michael's face went white. He reached out to grab the phone, but I was faster. "Don't bother. I have plenty of copies," I said, my voice like ice. "Now, let's talk." I placed a pre-drafted divorce agreement on the table. "These are my terms," I said, pointing to each clause. "First, we divorce. You are entirely at fault, so all assets in my name, the house, the car, my savings remain with me. Second, your company was built with my money. you will sign over 50% of the shares to me. Third, you and your mother will sign a legally binding agreement to never appear in or interfere with my life again, in any form. If you violate it, this recording and all other evidence will be sent to the proper authorities. Michael read the agreement, his hands shaking. My terms were harsh. They meant he would walk away with nothing, losing the very career he had built his lies upon. You can't do this, he pleaded. If you take everything, how will I live? That's not my problem, I replied, my voice devoid of emotion. That's the price you pay for your betrayal and deceit. You have two choices: sign or face the law. The choice is yours. Michael slumped forward, his head in his hands, his shoulders shaking. His life, his future, it was all in my hands. The silence stretched on. Finally, he looked up, his eyes filled with defeat and despair. Okay, I'll sign. He took the pen, his hand trembling so badly he could barely write. The scratch of his signature on the paper was the final punctuation mark on our marriage and the end of his and his mother's scheme. When he was done, I took the agreement and stood up. My lawyer will be in touch to handle the legal proceedings, I said, then turned and walked away without a backward glance. I had won. It was a complete victory, but I felt no elation, only a profound sense of exhaustion and emptiness. The war was over, but the wounds it left would take a very long time to heal. Would Michael and his mother, having lost everything, truly leave me in peace? Or would they seek revenge in a way that was even more desperate and cruel? Returning to San Francisco, I immediately initiated the legal procedures. With Michael's signed agreement and David's expert help, everything proceeded quickly and smoothly. Within a week, Michael and I were officially divorced. The house, the car, and 50% of Michael's company shares were legally transferred to my name. Michael moved out of the house with nothing but a few suitcases of clothes and what little cash he had left. He left without a word. I heard he moved back in with his mother. Sarah, upon learning her son had lost everything to me, flew into a rage. She called me, screaming curses and threats, but I no longer cared. I listened silently before hanging up and blocking her number. To me, those people had ceased to exist. I started a new life, alone in the spacious house. At first, it felt empty, but that feeling was quickly replaced by a sense of freedom and peace. I no longer had to wait up for late dinners or listen to his web of lies. I could do whatever I wanted. I threw myself back into the architectural career I had abandoned. With David's encouragement, I started my own design firm. My old contacts, my accumulated experience, and my innate talent helped me land my first projects quickly. Work became my salvation, helping me forget the pain of the past. I rediscovered my passion, my self-worth. I was no longer Olivia, the housewife. I was Olivia, the architect, an independent and successful woman. As for Michael's company, after taking control of my 50% stake, I initiated a major overhaul. I fired the incompetent employees he had hired through nepotism and restructured the entire operation. From an empty, debt-ridden shell, the company slowly became stable and profitable. I didn't run it myself. I hired a professional CEO to manage it. To me, the company was just an investment, a spoil of war. It was a testament to Michael's foolishness and a reminder of what I had endured. Time passed. A year went by. My life had found a new, stable rhythm. My firm was thriving, carving out a solid reputation in the industry. I sold the large, cold house in Marin County, with its painful memories, and bought a smaller, cozier condo in the city. I thought the past was truly behind me. I was wrong. One afternoon at the office, I received a call from an unknown number. "Hello, is this Olivia?" a woman's voice asked. It was vaguely familiar, but filled with panic. "This is Jessica." I froze. Jessica, the name I had tried so hard to forget. After everything fell apart, she had vanished without a trace. I couldn't imagine why she was calling me now. "What do you want?" I asked coolly. "Olivia, please, you have to help me," she cried, her voice trembling and broken by sobs. "Sarah, she kidnapped my baby." "What?" I shot up from my chair. "What are you talking about? Kidnapped your baby? What does my former mother-in-law have to do with it?" He's Michael's son," Jessica choked out. "After I left your house, I found out I was pregnant. I was too scared to tell anyone, so I had the baby and have been raising him alone back home. But somehow, Sarah found out. A few days ago, she showed up at my door, saying she wanted to claim her grandson. I refused, so she sent some men and they just took him. She said if I go to the police, she'll make sure my son and I are never safe. Olivia, please, I know you hate me, but I'm begging you. You're the only one who can help me. She's afraid of you. If you just talk to her, tell her to give me back my son. I'm on my knees begging you." Her words hit me like a physical blow. Michael had a son, the grandson Sarah had always craved, and she had resorted to kidnapping to get him. The cruelty of that woman knew no bounds. I hated her. I hated Michael, and I hated Jessica. But the child, he was innocent. He didn't deserve to be torn from his mother, to be raised in an environment of hatred and crime. The compassion inside me, the part of me that was a woman, stirred. I couldn't just turn a blind eye. "Where are you?" I asked, my voice calm again. "I'll meet you. I'll handle this." I knew I was being dragged back into the vortex of drama with that family. But this time, I wasn't fighting for myself. I was fighting for an innocent child. With this return to their lives, could I finally put an end to the tragedy they created? And what kind of future would that child have? I met Jessica at a small, roadside diner far from the city center. She looked haggard and worn, a stark contrast to the cunning, sharp-edged girl I remembered. Her eyes were swollen, her face ghostly pale. The moment she saw me, she fell to her knees, grabbing my legs and sobbing. "Olivia, I'm so sorry. It was all my fault. I was wrong. Please, I'm begging you, save my son." I pulled her up and guided her to a chair. "Get up. Crying won't solve anything. Tell me everything." Between sobs, Jessica recounted her story. After leaving my house, she discovered she was pregnant. Terrified, she went back to Ohio and gave birth alone to a baby boy who looked just like Michael. She named him Jacob. She had tried to cut off all contact, hoping for a quiet life, but somehow Sarah had tracked her down. At first, she was sweet, promising Jessica money and status if she would just hand over the child. Jessica refused. Her son was now her entire world. When persuasion failed, Sarah showed her true colors. She sent several thuggish men to Jessica's house who threatened her and snatched the baby right out of her arms. She said he was her grandson, the heir to the family name. She said I wasn't fit to raise him. Jessica wept. She threatened that if I called the cops, she'd have us both taken care of. I'm so scared, Olivia. Listening to her, my heart grew heavy. Sarah's evil had surpassed all limits. She was ruthless not only to me but to a new mother and an infant. She saw the baby as a possession, an object to satisfy her selfish obsession with legacy. "Does Michael know about this?" I asked. Jessica shook her head. "I don't know. I haven't spoken to him since I left, but I'm sure he's in on it. He's her son, after all." Her words made me think. It was entirely possible. A weak man like Michael, having lost everything, would likely fall back under his mother's control, pinning his hopes on a son as his last chance at redemption. "What do you want me to do?" I asked directly. I was just hoping you could talk to her, convince her to give me my son back. She'll listen to you." Jessica looked at me with desperate hope. I gave a bitter laugh. "You overestimate my influence. She's not afraid of me. She's afraid of the law and of losing face. But don't worry, I won't let her get away with this. The baby belongs with his mother." I stood up. "Go home for now. Find a safe place to stay where her people can't find you. Leave the rest to me. And stay in touch." Jessica looked at me, her eyes filled with gratitude and remorse. "Olivia, I don't know how to thank you. I was so wrong to you." "You don't need to thank me," I said coldly. "I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it for the child. He's innocent, and I won't stand by while another person becomes a victim of that family." Leaving the diner, I didn't go back to the office. I drove to a place I never thought I'd see again, the shabby apartment complex where Michael and Sarah were now living. I had to face them directly. I had to end this tragedy once and for all. I didn't go alone. I had called David, and he arrived immediately with 2 large bodyguards. I also gave a heads up to the local police precinct about a potential disturbance. I was prepared for a confrontation. When we arrived, the apartment was dark, but I knew they were inside. I could hear a baby crying. I motioned for the bodyguards to flank the door, then I raised my hand and knocked hard. The door creaked open. It was Michael. He looked gaunt, having aged a decade. Seeing me, he froze, his eyes widening in panic when he saw David and the 2 men behind me. "Olivia? Why are you here?" he stammered. I didn't answer. I pushed past him and walked into the apartment. It was small, cluttered, and smelled of dampness. Sarah was sitting on a worn-out sofa, holding a baby boy. The moment she saw me, she flinched and clutched the baby tighter, her eyes full of hostility. "You! What are you doing here?" she snarled. "Give me the baby," I said, my voice like steel. "You have no right to take him from his mother. What you've done is kidnapping, and it's a felony." "He's my grandson! He has my family's blood!" she shrieked. "His mother isn't fit to raise him. Only I can give him a good future." "A good future?" I scoffed. "How?" "By teaching him to be cruel, selfish, and to disregard the law, just like you? Look at yourself. You ruined your son's life, you destroyed your own family, and now you want to ruin the future of an innocent child?" My words hit their mark. She was speechless, her face turning pale. Michael stood by, his head bowed in shame. "I'm giving you 2 choices," I continued, my tone uncompromising. 1, you hand the baby over to me peacefully. I will return him to his mother, and this will all be over. Or 2, I call the police. For the crime of kidnapping a minor, I think you know what you'll be facing. And this time, no one can save you. I held up my phone in front of her. "You have 5 minutes to decide." Silence descended upon the room, made heavier by the baby's cries. Faced with my unyielding stance and the threat of irrefutable legal action, would this vicious woman finally back down? Or would she resort to one last, desperate act of madness? The 5 minutes ticked by in suffocating silence. Sarah sat frozen, her eyes staring blankly into space. The baby in her arms, sensing the tension, quieted to soft hiccups. Michael stood like a statue, not daring to move. "Time's up," I announced, my voice cold and final. "Have you made your decision?" I moved my thumb over my phone's screen, ready to dial 911. "Wait!" Michael suddenly cried out, his voice trembling. He walked toward me and slowly, incredibly, knelt on the floor. "Olivia, I'm begging you. Please, spare my mother this one time." He looked up, his eyes red and filled with tears. She only did it because she loves her grandson so much, because of her obsession with the family line. She didn't mean any harm. Didn't mean any harm? I laughed without humor. Stealing someone's child is no harm? You're still defending her? "I'm not defending her." Michael shook his head frantically. "I know what Mom did was wrong, completely wrong, but she's my mother. I can't just stand by and watch her go to prison. Olivia, I'll do anything you want. I'll kneel here all day. Just please, don't call the police. I promise, I swear, I'll convince her to give the baby back. Then we'll leave. We'll leave the city and disappear from your life forever." He punctuated his pleas by touching his forehead to the cold, dirty floor. I looked down at the man kneeling at my feet, the man who was once my husband. For a fleeting moment, I saw a different side of him. Not a weak-willed coward, but a son trying desperately to protect his mother, no matter how guilty she was. Just then, Sarah, who had been silent as a statue, spoke. Her voice was hoarse and weak, stripped of its usual venom. "That's enough, Michael. Get up, son." She looked at me, a look I had never seen before. Her eyes held no hostility, only exhaustion, defeat, and perhaps a flicker of late-coming remorse. "You win," she whispered. "Take the boy. Give him back to his mother. I'm old. I'm tired. I don't want to fight you anymore." She slowly stood and brought the baby over, placing him in my arms. The child looked from me to his grandmother, babbling softly. I took him, his warmth spreading through me. In that instant, all the hatred in my heart seemed to dissolve. I looked at Sarah, the woman who had caused me so much pain, and saw only a pathetic old woman. Her hair was grayer, her back more stooped, her sharp eyes now empty. "Thank you," I said softly. I turned to Michael, still on the floor. "Get up and keep your promise." Then, holding the baby, I turned and walked out of that apartment. David and the bodyguards followed. I didn't look back. I knew that the long, painful tragedy was finally, truly over. I didn't call the police. I chose to end it quietly, not because I forgave them, but because I wanted to free myself. I was tired of the fighting, tired of the hatred. I wanted peace, for myself and for the innocent children caught in the crossfire. I returned Jacob to Jessica. Their reunion was a storm of tears. Jessica thanked me profusely, saying she would be indebted to me for life. I told her only one thing: for your son's sake, live a good life. Don't repeat the mistakes of the past. A few days later, I heard that Michael's family had sold what little they had and moved back to Ohio. They had vanished, just as he had promised. My life finally returned to its peaceful, steady course. I focused on my work, growing my design firm. David was always by my side, no longer just an ally or a friend, but gradually becoming an indispensable part of my life. He was never pushy or dramatic. He was just there, quietly supportive, sharing my burdens, giving me a steady shoulder to lean on. Our love grew naturally, gently, like a spring breeze. 6 months later, my firm won a major contract to design a luxury resort in Carmel by the Sea. It was a challenging and promising project. Faced with this huge opportunity, I made a bold decision. I would move to Carmel permanently. I wanted to leave San Francisco and its heavy memories behind. I wanted a fresh start in a new place, a place of sea, sand, and sun. When I told David my decision, he wasn't surprised. He just smiled and took my hand. "Home is wherever you are. My company has been planning to open a new branch in Southern California anyway. How about we go together?" I looked at him, tears of happiness rolling down my cheeks. After all the storms, I had finally found my safe harbor. A man who not only loved me but respected, understood, and was ready to follow me anywhere. The great drama of my life had closed, but a new chapter, one filled with love and happiness, was just beginning. The past had taught me a bitter lesson about betrayal and human nature, but it had also taught me how to stand up, how to love myself, and how to cherish what I have. I once thought I had lost everything, but it turned out that loss was just a new beginning, a beginning for a new life, a new love, and a complete, whole happiness. Standing on the precipice of my new life, I believed that from now on there would only be sunny days ahead.